Doom64. Doom64 was a great game of the N64 era. I never actually played Doom64, but I have played Doom 3 and Doom 2016, and I have also played a little bit of Doom 2. I'm more of a fan of the newer style of Doom games, but Doom64, it's a first-person shooter made by many of the original ID team members along with members at Midway. The game centers around the Mother Demon, an evil entity who resurrects all the creatures you once killed. It has a more horror-based feel and atmosphere in the game, but it still stays strong as a strong shooter in the classic style of shooting. All the horror-based elements are mainly just in their lighting and in the way they design the maps and put on the textures and everything. The story for Doom64 is very sparse, and by sparse I mean there's only a manual really that gives you information on the story. And the manual says, "The story so far, the past. Your fatigue was enormous. The price for encountering pure evil, hell, was a place no mortal was meant to experience. Stupid military doctors." And it goes on. The story isn't that really important. They don't really give you any reading in game, which would be awesome, like Doom 3. And Doom 2016 also has a good amount of story. I really love getting down in there and reading that extra lore. And I really like Doom 3 for that, with all the UAC emails and little diaries that you find. But Doom 64, you can speculate, you can imagine the story. They give you lots of spectacular architecture with tons of intricate moving parts and some great platforming segments that really give you a tense, immersive experience, and it really helps add to the atmosphere. But other than that, it would be great if there was some more story. But Doom 64, all the old Doom games in general, the story isn't that important. As you can see, here are all the various enemies based on the manual that you will see inside Doom 64, a variety of demons. I am playing on the EX version of Doom 64. There are a few others, such as a brutal version, and there is another. You could also try playing Doom 64 on an emulator, or you can use the original console for the EX version. Here are the video options that you can turn on and off. One thing to note is that 2560 by 1080 did not work well on this game for me. I heard other versions work well with 2560 by 1080, so if that is a killer for you, and you have a native 2560 by 1080 monitor, go with brutal Doom 64. For its time, the graphics definitely do look very good. It has great landscapes. The skybox looks great. There's lots of great colorful lighting. All the guns look and sound good. And especially if you're playing on one of the updated versions, they all look great. You're not going to slack on any graphics in any of the updated versions. And Doom 64 itself on the original console looks great as well. I'm not sure if it took advantage of the expansion pack. I doubt it did, because the expansion pack came out very late in the N64 life cycle. One negative of the game, though, when it comes to graphics and sound, is the ambient noise is very boring after you're like 20 levels in. Now, the old Dooms had fast-paced music and everything. I think this game would be better if it kept that fast-paced music and had the ambient music sometimes, not during all the levels that you're playing the game constantly. It'd be great if they had the ambient noise and then when you get into an intense encounter, they start playing some music. That would also help with the horror feel, I think. But currently, as is, it gets very boring. If you have a playlist on your music provider of choice, I suggest putting on some music for this game. Doom64 on the EX version controls like any first-person shooter of the modern times. You can WASD, mouse to move the cursor. You can keybind everything. Shift is the sprint. So it controls very well. There's absolutely no problems there. The N64 controls, they're a little weird. They're not as good as the Turok 2 C controls. You can take a look at these. I have them up on the screen. Other than that, nothing else to say there. The controls are great. I didn't run into any glitches. Everything was snappy and worked perfectly. Doom64 is a labyrinth shooter. Therefore, you're going to be going through mazes, finding different keys or skull keys. You're going to need to find a red, blue, and yellow key to get through each level. There are platforming segments, and I wish there were more. I miss the days of platforming and shooters. The platforming segments in this are light for its era. Now, there are no mini games in this, but there are hidden zones and hidden levels. Sometimes the hidden zones are so hard to find, they make it so you can't even face it as you go into it. Seriously, there was a hidden zone I went into where you had the sidestep into it while facing a specific direction. Very interesting. I'm sure if you were a kid or even an adult playing this back in the day on your N64, you had tons of replay value trying to find all these spots. One negative about the gameplay in this, though, is that it can get kind of boring because all the environments are the same sometimes. I really wish there was more diversity in the environments, and a lot more platforming would be nice. The final score I give Doom64 is a 90 out of 100. Some factors that went into that score is the story just needed a little bit more, maybe some terminals, but lore. The future Dooms fixed that, so it looks like the devs also realized that that was something holding back their games. So good on them for that. They actually learn, unlike other companies. The graphics were mind-blowing for its time, so no problems there. It's absolutely beautiful. Even in the modern era, you get one of the remastered versions. It's still the same game, still all the same graphics, but it looks a lot sharper and they add some extra effects. So you really get to see the great art that ID can produce. The gameplay is perfect. The only thing I could say is the levels got a little bit boring after seeing the same thing repeated over and over. Maybe a little bit more diversity, but other than that, it was amazing. The platforming was smooth. All the different monsters that you got to fight were fun to fight and had different mechanics for fighting them. The controls, nothing bad about the controls. The controls are absolutely perfect, how you can keybind everything. Even the N64 controls, while a little funky, it's the N64, so you can't do much there. That's a limitation with the actual controller. People, all different game companies, were figuring out the best way to utilize a N64 controller. So, that being said, you should go buy Doom64 and definitely play it. Do I recommend this for a collector? Yes, you should. If you're trying to collect Doom games or N64 games, definitely buy a copy of Doom64 right now. They're for $20 I was seeing on eBay. And does the game hold up? It definitely does. 100% holds up. It's a labyrinth shooter with tons of replayability and amazing guns, and a community of gamers who keep making the game better and better. So that being said, 32 gigs of RAM out, and I hope you all have a great day.